someone believes in you. So like the simple version is like, like Bear got the opportunity to do this Percy Jackson show. And then Bear goes, "Great. Like I believe I know I need like I'm gonna do this with the team, and I believe in Brian and his musicality that he can do this."
Yeah, you have to leave your ego at the door a bit more with working for a team. I mean, I think at the end of the day, anytime that you're sharing your music with the world or with the director or producer, you have to leave your ego at the door. But um, it it's a really fine line to walk of like really you really still have to care about the music. Like that's the whole point of why we're doing this. And I really do feel like every cue that I write, I the smallest thing, I really like care about it a ton, and I want it to be awesome and musical and be the best cue that it can be.
You get the collaboration with the filmmaker or showrunner or whatnot, but not with fellow composers who you can bounce ideas off of and learn from them and all that. And I'm just like always learning from Brian and Alex and our other co-composers.
Well, welcome to the show today. My name is Jason Tonioli. This is the Successful Musicians Podcast, and I have three special guests today that have been working on some incredibly cool projects, and I think they have one of the more interesting stories for collaboration and just composing that I'm super excited to have them share with you. I have Jesse Hartov, Brian Claeys, and Alex Cote. I don't know if I said that right, Alex.
Nailed it.
I did. I got it. Cool. So these three, and I know there's other people involved as well, have just recently been the composers and the music people that have done the Disney Plus Percy Jackson series, which is awesome. My kids watch. That's one of the few shows actually we watched the whole series. It was good. My kids were. It was funny. They were so excited that it was good. I guess there was another version of it that people weren't as excited about. Hopefully, I don't hurt any feelings about that. But the Disney Plus version, it's been incredible. Like I think across the board, it was just really, really fun to see that. You guys have been part of the Sparks and Shadows, I think, is the studio with Bear McCreary, and and recently, I think for the first time ever, there was an Emmy that you guys won as a composer team. And normally Emmys are like an individual award, and for the first time, you received this Emmy for and I don't know how that all works. It'd be interesting to hear the story behind that, but you guys are doing some really cool things. So welcome to the show.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jason. Happy to
Thank you
be
so
here.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
thrilled to be here.
So let's start out. I would love to jump in and share a little bit about how you guys maybe met and then just talk a little bit about the project, just give us a little bit of an introduction. I don't know who wants to take it, but jump in and let's just hear a little bit about who you guys are and how you guys ended up where you are today.
Sure. So I think the simple version is we all met at Berklee College of Music. I was long fun time doing music to get there. I met Jesse when I was a senior and he was a freshman at
Hmm.
a very nerdy club called a video game music club because that was the passion at the time. I was in charge of it and I thought Jesse would be a good fit to help me out, and so I dragged him into it. And then I met Brian out here in Los Angeles when we were coworkers originally. I suppose that'd be the word,
Something like that.
something
Yeah.
like that.
And so back when you were in school, so was the dream to do video game music? Is that what you kind of thought you wanted to do, or is that more to just kind of broaden what you guys were doing? I'm just curious how the Berkeley music space kind of works there.
At least for me at the time, I was really interested in video games. I grew up more as a gamer than a TV film goer, so I was really passionate about that world. But work has, and I've done some stuff in video games, which we can talk about. But at least my work out here has brought me more towards film and TV, which I love, and it's been great. So, but video games are a big part of my upbringing and very inspiring in terms of wanting to pursue music as a real thing.
Right. Well, Brian and Jesse, any thoughts on? I'm just curious with how in the world do people, as you're looking back on this, what lessons would you have for people in coming into kind of this collaboration zone or kind of building those relationships to try and do something similar to like what you guys have done?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if me and Alex and Brian had could have predicted at the time that, we all met originally that, we'd end up doing this podcast here after an Emmy. So I mean, I think we're all friends and we met either through work or nerdy club stuff at school and like it's kind of just an example of connections, you know, this industry, whether you consider it the film industry or the music industry, just being heavily about connections and who you know and friendships. And um, we all are part of like a very supportive community of creatives. And in short, I think that's kind of how we ended up in this situation.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel like it has just as much to do with the fact that we like working together as much as the fact of how good musicians we are, or composers. And I think that kind of is the reason that we've been able to work on so many different projects together, is because personally I feel like the three of us just work really well together and are good friends and have good rapport. And like I trust both of these guys a lot with, I'll send them, even if I'm not working on them with something, I'll send them music that I'm making. And like I always appreciate their feedback and stuff like that. So it's the kind of thing where it's like there's a lot of great musicians and composers out there, but when you have a good relationship and friendship with people, it kind of lends towards just a better product, I think, and a better
Oh.
experience.
So you guys all kind of came together under the Sparks and Shadows. Bear McCreary, it's his studio, right? So tell a little bit about what has he got going there. I mean, I know there's been projects like Call of Duty and Godzilla, Lord of the Rings, the new Amazon one. I mean, there's just some really crazy cool things coming out of that studio and have for years. But how, like, what has that been like, and how did you guys all come into under that umbrella, I guess, and originally?
Jesse, go for it.
I guess,
Yeah, Jesse was the first one to start working with Bear, so you can go
yeah,
ahead.
out of the three of us, not ever by any means, but yeah, so when I was still at Berkeley in 2015, I was looking for an internship in LA, and I ended up applying to Sparks and Shadows, where there were a lot of Berkeley alum working with Bear already, and so I think they were very interested in, looking for interns from Berkeley and things like that. Long story short, I ended up interning there during that summer. Um, Went back to school, finished school, kept up my connections with the very talented composers there that I had worked for. Ended up sort of on their tech team, doing a lot of technical assistant stuff, a position called scoring tech. Transitioned to more of a composition and writing position there. And while I was in that position, Brian came on as an intern. He absolutely crushed it. I think, and Brian can tell you more detail, but kind of similar path, ended up being an employee and a composer there. And Alex was not an intern or employee, but Alex and I had known each other um, for a long time at that point. And as he said, he was a senior when I was a freshman. So Alex was a mentor of mine back at Berkeley. And he was the one who pressured me into our very pressure intensive dual major nerd,
You did great.
thank you. So did you. Um, and when we got the Call of Duty Vanguard project, we were looking to put together a team similar to Percy. And I thought of Alex, and he joined us on that and did an amazing job. And that's sort of how the three of us started collaborating, in this particular combination. And I don't know, I'll let you guys take over from there, but that's sort of the origin story here, I guess, right?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
quite the pressure cooker of a project to for us all to start on too. It was a crazy one. But yeah, I like Jesse said, I met him. I actually think I met Jesse. I came and visited Sparks and Shadows with the film scoring department. Um, and then I moved out here after I graduated, and like I remember I drove to LA, got in my apartment, and then got like an email that they want to interview me like a few days after, and I was hired like 7 days after I moved to LA, and I started. So like I moved to LA January 2019, and I've worked for Bear McCreary since January 2019. It's kind of been it's been an
Yeah,
amazing
when Brian
experience.
visited the company, we
Yeah.
he stuck out. and we all remembered him, and I remember us being like, let us know when
Well, it's a
you
cool place.
move.
It's a cool place, and it's something that I didn't really know about like when you're like growing up, even at the beginning of Berkeley. But I think especially as a kid, when you like I did, like I really knew I wanted to do this since for a long time. Like especially like film and TV music, I was always very interested in it, and I just liked composing and making music that was awesome, but that also worked with picture and TV. And I didn't really know. I thought you just had to go out and like get yourself a movie or get yourself a TV show, and you're able to just that's how you do it. And that sounds really daunting, and I kind of just hoping it would work, but I don't think you really know how much it takes to go into the project because that's the thing about Bear and about Sparks and Shadows is it's not even just like additional music writers or like the Sparks and Shadows writing team. There's so many people that it takes to make the score. So like Bear has a ton of tech people we have that help him with like an insanely awesome rig that we all get a benefit from, and like an admin team for booking like all the sessions. Like Lord of the Rings, we record like so many. The amount of sessions is insane. Like it's like 20 hours out of 24 hours in a week you're doing sessions. So it's like to do stuff like that when you have so many projects it's impossible for one person to do it, let alone the orchestrators and the engineers and everything like that. So if you're just thinking that it's just a composer doing everything by themselves without any help, you don't really know where you could fit in if you came out here and you're maybe not fully ready to be a composer yet or to do your own thing yet, and you're still trying to learn. But um, I was just really lucky that a place like Sparks and Shadows, I know there's other places in LA like it too, existed to like give me that opportunity because there's just so much to learn. I'm still learning now. I'm sure Alex and Jesse are too. That's kind of what it's been. It's just been an amazing opportunity to learn and for us to prove ourselves.
But
Bear's had a lot of
I want to go on that vein. So you were an intern, just came out there, and you mentioned that he stood out. So if I'm that kid sitting in and listening to this, what types of things would help somebody stand out in if they were, when they do get their shot to whether it's a tour or just even if it's just trying to get noticed, what types of things would make somebody stand out in your mind, to a studio like that?
I think I remember a few times um, we would have students, and at one point I was one of those students, not specifically on these trips, but visiting places in LA or visiting places where you might be interested in opportunities. And I think it's just clear like which students are more engaged in the sort of work that's going on there. And I think Brian was one of those people. Like I remember him asking questions. I remember having a one-on-one conversation with him about what we do. And, you know, I recall him just being engaged with that kind of work and expressing interest in it. And some of the other students, might not be as interested. And maybe it's because the program dragged them to a film scoring thing and they're more of a mix engineer or whatever. Like it's not necessarily bad. Um, but I think when you're an employee there and people are coming through, you can sort of tell. Or for example, if you sometimes I get asked to talk to younger students, like I recently talked to some high school students in Australia about film scoring, and some of them send me a lot of follow-up questions, and they stick out to me because I remember that they emailed me after, and I remember their names, and I remember what they asked me because they made a point to put in that effort. And some people maybe aren't interested in what I do, and that's fine, but they're not. I can't recall who they are because we didn't have another conversation. So
I,
I think that's
that
part of
it's
it.
in talking about it, I think it's interesting as I've talked with I've got some teenagers, and so I around my house right now with my kids, I've got lots of people in that age group, and it's a lot of them are hesitant to send a follow up, or or they're like, oh, I can't send an email, or I can't, I'm not able to talk to them. And I think there's like this fear that a lot of people have that maybe they're going to look stupid, or that these cool film composer guys are going to think that I'm dumb for asking a question. But I'm not hearing that vibe at all from you. That you're saying that that's what's going to make somebody stand out, is if they're willing to say I don't know everything, and they're genuinely curious, right?
Yeah. And I completely relate to the not wanting to. I mean, I'm an introvert by nature. I am shy by nature. I don't like to put myself out there and send an email to someone so I totally understand. It takes practice, honestly. The first email you send, you're going to be uncomfortable. But like the worst, you have to remember the worst thing that happens is they don't reply to you. It's not the end of the world, you
It's not
know.
like they probably even remember you if they didn't
Or
reply.
yeah. And funnily enough, now that we're talking, I'm just making this connection now, but now that we're talking about it, Alex again, he asked me to come on board with the video game music club, and I had to get a lot of practice cold emailing composers that I thought had no business talking to me, this, green, super green 18-year-old, 19-year-old, but we would get like heavy hitting A-list composers to come talk to the class. Part of it was we were saying, hey, it's Berkeley and all these students would love to learn from you. But part of it was just sending a polite email, say, hi, we're really interested in your work. Would you be willing to blah, 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 blah. So I was lucky to get a little bit of practice on that ahead of time, I think, from that experience. But I definitely think um, because a lot of people don't do it, you stick out a lot more when you do follow up with people like that. So yeah, that would be my advice there, I guess.
And you guys have been, I mean, again, you've been on some very, very high level projects. And yes, there's, at least as I look at across all industries, this isn't just even a music thing, but you get these people who people think, oh, they're famous or they're a big deal. Oftentimes those people are way more approachable than I think most of us realize. They don't want to waste time, and they're very protective of their time and what they who who they maybe spend a lot of time talking to. But I think in general they're human beings as well, and they want to help somebody or serve somebody. And you know I think that's just kind of if you're successful in life, it's probably because you've been a nice enough person to get along with people, and that bodes well if you're trying to get somebody you know, to get in a job at a studio like what you're doing with Bear. I don't know Bear, but I'm sure he's one of the coolest people
He's
out there,
very
right?
personable. Yeah. And I was gonna say if you did email someone and they did blow you off and they were standoffish or whatever, you probably don't want to work for them anyway. I'm sure there's some of those people exist, but they're probably not gonna continue to get people who want to work with them. And that's the thing, is like it pays off in itself, you know. You you want to work with people that are invested in, like Jesse's talking to, to students in Australia about doing film scoring. You want to People generally want to help other people and to collaborate and work with people. There are some people who probably don't, and so I wouldn't take it personal if like there are some people who don't do that, but they're doing it wrong probably.
Well, and I've done sales for a long time, and I know for me, just as busy as I am, sometimes you have the best of intentions. Somebody emails you, but because you're getting 100, 200, 300 emails a day, it just accidentally falls through the cracks, and they may have had every intent of responding to you, but they forgot. And so if somebody doesn't respond, don't take that as oh, that guy's a jerk, or that lady's a jerk. I'm not gonna do anything. Send them another thing. But I do, what I will say, having been on both sides of receiving emails from people and sending them, make sure that you have something valuable, so it's something worth responding to, or add some value, or just even just something as nice as a thank you, or saying something nice to somebody that doesn't need a response goes a long ways. People remember those types of things. You get three nice things like that from somebody, you're for sure going to remember it. How did you connect with that the music connected you with this, or hey, I was listening to this tune and loved how you brought in the drums, or what. I mean, there's just so many things that show that you're interested in them that will stand out, that I think younger people need to pay attention to, whether it's music or any industry if you're trying to get a job in, right? Talk to me a little bit about, in working on these big projects. You talked about it, that it was very daunting to kind of work on a project like this. How logistically, how in the world does something like the Lord of the Rings or these, Percy Jackson project, how do you guys keep that organized? I mean, is there some like superhuman logistical person that manages everybody? Or, how does that work? And what advice would you have for somebody coming, maybe they're an intern coming into a situation like that? What advice, what do they need to know about how it works? And then what advice would you have for somebody if they do end up on a project like that?
Brian, I think Brian is very well equipped to answer this.
Brian is the superhuman.
Especially not only because Brian was the project lead on Percy, but also because the way that I started on the tech team at Sparks and Shadows, Brian started on the admin team, and he firsthand has a lot of experience with the logistics of scoring. If you don't mind my saying, Brian.
Yeah. No, it's and Jesse's had the same role before. Alex is also on like, also done that on projects. It's like it's it's a different job in a way. But like the most important job is that we're all obviously writing the music, but there's just a lot that goes into making the score and like getting it all approved and recorded and sounding good and everybody happy and making something that, hopefully wins an Emmy. So I just wanted to make sure that we had a team of people that I liked working with. So namely like Alex and Jesse and Bailey and Omer and Kelsey who are on this call. But it's the kind of thing where I'm able to, if I know who I'm working with, like we're kind of all working on the cues together in a way. So like Alex is writing the cue, but like he's using themes that Bear wrote or something that I wrote, or we're going with directions from the spot. So there has to be somebody to kind of, cohesively make the score whole, right? Make sure that someone isn't writing something completely off the wall or like using the wrong thing. But other than that, like it really is everyone bringing their own thing to the table. I'm kind of just like a safeguard in that, if that makes sense.
Oh, gotcha. Um, and from a kind of workload, I know musicians end up, especially when they're working on projects like this, the hours are crazy. I mean, what should somebody expect? What is normal, or what's the perfect scenario, and then what's likely to happen? So if people are like, oh, I want to be a film composer, I want to do video games, what is the reality of that, from your perspective?
I'm sure we all have different answers. I would say I have some days where it's a sort of a normal 9 to 5, so to speak. But those are the I I would say I normally can keep it to a sort of standard working hours, but then when the project starts to crunch up upon a deadline, I'll start putting more in, and we frequently will take on like multiple things at once, or just the way deadlines work out, you don't predict when you say yes to a thing, and they end up overlapping, and that becomes a logistical challenge to get through. So I suppose in short, it's always going to be at least 8 hours, and it's likely going to be 12 or more. So it's been my experience.
Yeah, it's not like I've always said like I'm always like so jealous that sometimes I like that I don't have a job that's like making a burger at McDonald's where it's like you make the burger and it's done. With like music, you could keep going forever. Like if I could have like a month to write one cue, I would take the month. And not just because of my procrastinating on it, but because like I can mix and tweak and program and write forever. And so the thing is like you go until you don't want to go anymore. And that's actually kind of one thing I wanted to say about like an intern or someone that's trying to be a writer is that everyone's at a different stage in your career in terms of learning. So like if I'm working with someone and I'm like reviewing their key or whatever, I'm not expecting it to necessarily be at the same level. It could be better than what I'm doing, worse, whatever. But I think putting in an acceptable amount of time is really important. Like there's some things where it's like if if you send a cue over, like you write a cue and it's the audio just like cuts off like randomly. You know what I mean? It's like that's something where you should catch it, right? Versus like if you're just writing something that maybe like someone could write a better cue, it's that's not important. Like I think a lot of people coming out of Berkeley get caught up in like, am I a good enough composer? You definitely are, but you need to care and put enough work and time into it that like you're not letting things slip. Because that's when you got to write so many minutes in a short amount of time and there's a lot of pressure. It's easy to do that, but that's kind of the thing that sets people apart. It's people that like I can depend on that they're gonna deliver like really good quality like stuff and put the time in because that's what it is. And it's just time, you know.
Something Brian's like highlighting here is like the job, as much as like music is a big part of it, like so much of the like it's like 40% maybe is composing, and the other like 60 or shift is administration, tech. I've talked to some of my non-music friends who've, when I describe what I do, they compare it to like engineering in terms of like how you approach like all the different ins and outs of the computer and like the gear that we use to make this happen. Like at our where we're at, there's sort of an assumption that you're going to be good at composing, and it's, do you have all the other things to make the deadlines, serve the project? Like that becomes the thing that's more important. I already know and believe that Jesse, Brian, and anyone I work with has the composing chops to get the project done.
Um, I'd love to add something if you don't mind. Because some of the context here too is like composing and especially composing for film and TV is part of it, we're more part of the post-production team on a movie than we are like in the film industry than part of the record industry, for example. Um, so like in the record industry, if you're a producer, you might take a lot of time to work on one track and make it, work on one track for a long amount of time. I don't know, weeks, months, however, just because of the context and the schedule and the way that that industry works. Whereas with film, we're working at the tail end of every project because we're in post-production. So there is a hard deadline when this thing needs to get done. And, it needs to be delivered. And before that, the movie needs to be mixed. And before that, the music needs to be mixed. And before that, the music needs to be recorded. And before that, notated. And before that, we have to write them, so there's just like logistically, um, there are a lot of moving parts. It takes like a small army to create, uh, a score because of all the different roles and just as Brian said before, not just composing, like all of these different aspects. Um, so if somebody wants to become a film composer as opposed to a music producer, they might want to keep in mind that difference in terms of workload and speed and all of that. Because there's definitely I feel at least there's always this tension between the top quality and, good and fast. That's kind of the challenge. That is kind of the main challenge I think for film composers is like I want it to be great and I also have to do it really quickly. And that takes a lot of repetition and practice and training. And I think people wanting to get it's awesome, but it's also stressful. It could be stressful. You might be staying up late nights sometimes. You might be working when you don't necessarily want to work. And so if you want to get into this, I think it's just good to keep that in mind that it's going to take time and practice to get to that point. And I don't even know if I'm at that point. I think it's going to be an endless journey, but
And my
so
guess is the dynamic with, so I've seen, a lot of these composers, they'll do stuff on their own, and there's obviously people in the background, but in, you rewind the clock back, and it's always been kind of one person's name on there as the composer, and I think it's very interesting. Even over the last 2 3 years, I've noticed at the, in the credits on movies and some of the other stuff, more of the musicians are getting recognized in the credits, which is incredible. If you go back to a film even 10 years ago, I can still remember like the craft services person that was bringing candy bars to the the little food table. They would get mentioned, but you'd only have like one music person mentioned on there. And what about that clarinet player and the trumpet and the drums and the there's 150 or 200 people, and I think it's been really interesting to see how the musicians now are all getting credit for it. But one thing in particular, I think you're in speak to this as you guys are finishing up a cue or a song or whatever thing you're working on, because there's a team and it's everybody's name is on it. My guess is it probably elevates the amount of quality and caring you guys put into something before you share it with the directors or whoever's the approval person. Just because if Brian's name's on it, if it's like halfway done and it chops off like you talked about, or it's like good night, Brian's having a bad day, it's going to affect everybody on the team. And so I'm guessing that, just as that team dynamic actually elevates all of you guys to care more and do an even better job than maybe you do if it was just you running solo, right?
I mean, hopefully we still care if we're running solo. Like I think all of us would say yes.
Right. Well, have you
But
seen that where you guys feel like you've all leveled up because you're all in this together?
I think we inspire each other. Alex, I don't mean to cut you off. Please go ahead. I was just going to say
I was just say it's like it's really all built on trust, right? Like someone believes in you. So like the simple version is like, like Bear got the opportunity to do this Percy Jackson show, and then Bear goes, "Great! Like I believe, I know I need like I'm gonna do this with the team, and I believe in Brian and his musicality that he can do this." And then Bear says, "Hey Brian, like I believe in you. Who do you think would be a good people to come join this team?" And Brian says, "Well, I believe in Alex and Jesse and Bailey, Omer, and these other people who were doing Kelsey." And from there, it's just like everyone sort of says, "Hey, like I believe in you, like come give it your best shot." And so you're like, thank you for this opportunity, like this is amazing, and like I believe in myself as well, but now it's like I want to validate your belief in me. And so like it starts with Bear and it trickles down, and we all try to like give our best back because we want the product to be as awesome as it can be. So it's a big part for me. That's a big part of it. It's like someone takes a chance on me, I'm gonna give it my all and make sure that I give the best back to that person.
Yeah, you have to leave your ego at the door a bit more with working for a team. I mean, I think at the end of the day, anytime that you're sharing your music with the world or with the director or producer, you have to leave your ego at the door. But it's a really fine line to walk of like really you really still have to care about the music. Like that's the whole point of why we're doing this. And I really do feel like every cue that I write, I the smallest thing, I really like care about it a ton, and I want it to be awesome and musical and be the best cue that it can be. It's hard to do that and then get feedback from a fellow composer or from a director or whoever that tells you that it's not good. And but there's a way to take that feedback and get really negative about it, and there's a way to take that feedback and realize that maybe there's some truth they're speaking and that you can actually learn from it, become a better composer. And that's an attitude that you kind of need to bring, and it's been super helpful for me. Like Bear has taught me so much. Like I have shown Bears a lot of cues that I thought were awesome, and then he's given me feedback that maybe I some people would find it disheartening, but at the end of the day, that made me a much better, writer. It's constructive at the end of the day, but it's hard to see it that way sometimes. So being a team, I think that's what helps. Like Alex's cues, Jess's cues, my cues, like we've all written stuff that we thought was awesome, and then it ended up being something else in the show, whether it's from something that I saw or Bear saw or a director saw, like it's changed. Um, it's you kind of just have to, learn from it versus getting upset about it.
But I think on the flip side, the flip side of that is sometimes Brian or Alex will send something, to our group chat, and I'll go, "Whoa, that's awesome. What's that? What did like what did you do? Like what's this thing 1 minute 30 seconds, Brian, Like what's that sound? What did you do there?" And then Brian will teach me something, you know, that I didn't know before, and I'll learn something from him. And that's something while scoring a project solo is great and has its benefits too. You don't get that um you don't get that you get the collaboration with the filmmaker or showrunner or whatnot, but not with fellow composers who you can bounce ideas off of and learn from them and all that. And I'm just like always learning from Brian and Alex and our other co-composers. And I just think that's awesome. So
It's a really good point.
Yeah, it gives everyone like the chance to be like sort of, fail safely, if you will. It's like, okay, before this goes out to the showrunners and we want it to be good for them, like let me just throw an idea at Brian or Jesse or anyone on the team. And if you can get like instant feedback and then refine an idea in a way that maybe you can't if you're just the solo composer.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So if you guys could all rewind the clock back and go kind of sit down with yourself back when you were at school, for example, or even before, let's say even before you were going to school, what advice would you, or what would you want to say to yourself, or what advice would you give yourself about kind of making things easier on your path, or is there things you'd say, hey, do this different, or I'm just curious with each of you what you might say to yourself.
I I feel like this simple advice I give myself is be a bit more patient. I feel like I look a lot of like the arc of my career, so to speak, and I feel like I was impatient a lot of times, and not that it's like gotten in my way, but it's just like, okay, I'm here where I am now, and like my path is my path. This is my journey. I think there's an idea of, you graduate college and you're like, I was the big fish in the small pond, and then you get thrown out into the wild. And you're like, no, that's not the case. It's going to be a longer road, and I think that I would say personally, I was like, I want to get there faster. But it's got me where I am. So I would say, yeah, be a bit more patient, and things are going to work out, and keep up all this stuff with your friends. They're your best allies.
Jesse?
Brian, what,
Brian?
or Jesse, who
Oh,
wants to go next?
I can go. Yeah, I was just gonna say, if I talked to my younger self, I'd probably just try to give him a little bit more belief in just their like my individual musicality and talent, ability, whatever. I think that at Berkeley or at high school, whatever, like when you're growing up, it's really hard to know like how good you are, and that's something that I feel like just in society you constantly are just like worrying and thinking about. And when it comes to needing to get a job or something like that, it's especially important. And it's really hard to gauge with music. It's such a subjective, personal thing. Um, and I think one thing I've just learned doing this is that no one's ever going to tell you something that's going to make you flip a switch of saying like, oh yeah, I really am like a good writer, a good musician, a good composer. Like that's not going to happen. You, you just have to realize that you already are that as long as you're working towards it. Like if I feel like I'm a better musician than I was a year ago, then I am a good composer because I know I'm good only going to keep getting better and my potential is um is infinite. But at the end of the day, it's all based in the musician I was when I was 10, like writing piano music, you know? Like there's a inherent musicality that I had as a child and that all of us have growing up that you carry with you the rest of your life. And I think if you keep believing in it and building off of it, you can become really successful. But I think for everybody growing up, it can be a bit hard sometimes to know whether you're good enough to make it. So yeah, that's probably what I would say.
Well, and I think knowing that you're good enough, but I think a lot of times for many people are the people that love us want to keep us safe, and a music career is not the traditional go make money as a doctor, a lawyer, just those classic, go make lots of money and you can do that. But I think there's a lot more fulfillment when people do give it their all and they get into the music industry. I think that's been really interesting as I've talked with 100 plus people now on this podcast. So great advice. Jesse, what words of wisdom do you have for yourself?
I think I have three things, but I'll keep them brief. Um, First one is if you want to, I don't, not sure if this is for me as a younger person or for other younger people who want to get into this, but in terms of advice, but if you want to get into film scoring, go meet filmmakers. Like Alex is saying, writing music is a small part of this. So doesn't matter how young you are, go meet some young filmmakers and offer to score their film. Like it's never too early to get started. Or if you want to score video games, go to a game jam, score someone's game, just do the thing. Don't wait till you're ready, quote unquote. You'll never feel like you're ready. Just go do the thing. Um, Second one is if you're spending all of your time on music and your craft, that's awesome. But if you want to do this professionally as opposed to as a hobby or passion, learn some personal finance and business skills. Um, Kind of, Jason, we were having a discussion about this before we started recording about that aspect, but I think, and I will not speak for anybody else, but I feel like myself as an artist musician, it was not that side of things was not my forte when I was in college. And I think I could have spent more time, little budgeted more time toward those skills as well. Uh, in the professional world, those skills will be very useful. And then the third thing is, at least when you're starting out and you're starting to learn this craft, don't think quality over quantity, but the opposite. So write a lot of music and don't worry if it's good or not, because like playing an instrument, this craft takes practice, and you just have to it's just repetition. Like the first 100 cues I wrote were terrible, maybe even more than that. And I just kept writing cues, and eventually they got better. Like there's kind of no way around it. Some people start out a little ahead of the curve, a little behind the curve in terms of the quality of their writing, but it's just the repetition that's going to make you better. So don't worry about writing your masterpiece, 10-minute long masterpiece, and spend 3 years writing that. Just keep, write some music, put it aside, write another piece of music, put it aside, just keep repeating, and you can't not improve, is what I'm saying, if you do that. You can't not get better if you just keep writing. So those are my things.
One of the things when you talk about the quantity, I 100% agree with that. A lot of people I run across in my world is they'll feel like they have to completely finish a song too. And I think sometimes just the act of writing one measure or a beat or a little melody down, no matter how you do it, just the fact that I think if you'll take one little step and put that down on paper or some repeatable way that you can then go back to it. I think that's when I've found for myself those ideas will then you'll get the next idea and the next idea. But I almost feel like, I mean, whether you want to call it a spiritual thing or just, maybe it's just in your brain, but I think the fact that we give, give a little bit of effort to that idea when it came, somewhere in our brain, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, they did something good with that idea. So I'm gonna plant another seed and plant another seed. And so when the really great idea comes, maybe we're ready for it. But as you mentioned, the first 100 things you did were not good. At the time you thought they were amazing. You were gonna give Hans Zimmer a run for his money, I'm sure, with that second thing you produced,
Or
right?
not. Yeah, but yeah,
So,
But and even still, I mean, there are a few anecdotes I could think of. One is Max Martin, the hyper successful songwriter, producer, talking about, the percentage of his hits that we all think of as, mega hits, or a very small percentage of the songs he's written. A lot of them we will never hear because they've never seen the light of day. Or, John Williams has an anecdote about writing that little 5 note motif from is it 5 notes? Yeah, 5 notes from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. If anyone has seen that movie, he wrote, I don't know how many he said, 50, 100 of those, whatever, until him and Spielberg were like, that's the one. So sometimes you just have to, even when you're, even not just starting out, but when you are, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, midway career or higher level, you just have to like iterate. Not every idea is going to be great. Sometimes you have something you think is great, and the producer or showrunner or director is like, this is not what I wanted. Sorry.
yep.
And you have to throw it away, So the more practice you have at that, I think the easier the job becomes because you just kind of brush yourself off and you're like, all right,
Yeah.
that's fine. I'm gonna make another thing.
I don't know whether you guys saw this. It was a Disney Plus thing. They did a special on John Williams where they interviewed him, and it was about an hour-long documentary. But I remember it was a couple months ago I watched it, and they had John Williams sitting at his piano, and he's like, you're just literally sitting there with him, and he's explaining how every day he will like just write some stuff out, and he's still using paper, and he talks about the fact, if I did technology, I'm sure I'd be more efficient, it'd be great, but I think the fact that he's no matter what, he's sitting down every day and spending a little bit of time, even if it's the 5 notes or it might be the whole thing that he's writing out. But I mean, that's huge. I mean, from one of the masters, the fact that he does that every day should say something. And if I think for anybody wanting to be a composer, especially, I mean, as you get busy, it gets harder and harder and harder to find time. And I think prioritizing that, I mean, that was, I think, my biggest, I mean, there was a whole lot of really great things in that documentary with John Williams, but the fact that he's still at his age doing that every single day just kind of told me, man, I need to make priority, even if it's 11 o'clock at night and I go just write a measure out, just do it and practice it because that's the only way I'm going to get better. Right. Um, I I know we're getting low on time, but I think a lot of people would be interested in this question. So with the video games or these, really um, epic type of shows that you guys have been able to be part of, how how do you guys find inspiration for these tunes that you're putting together? I mean, if I'm just trying to picture myself if somebody says come and do this Call of Duty, type of, here's the scenario, go write this thing, or Lord of the Rings scenario, and we've been to the movies, we've seen these things. How do you guys find that inspiration to not only honor what maybe exists, and maybe it's something totally new too, but then just have that creativity to go take it to another world or explore that? I mean, where do you guys find that happy place to get those ideas as you guys are working on music?
Should I ramble about Percy? Yeah, you want to talk about Percy? Okay, okay. So we'll do a little deep dive. So I guess spoilers. End of Percy. There's a queue that I worked on, and I took the lead on this queue, and it's the big finale when the three kids get together at the end. Like they sort of the quest is complete, and they're gonna be apart for the summer. So it's like them sort of saying goodbye, and it's like a little bittersweet. And I know when Brian and I were looking at this queue originally and trying to discuss like what the inspiration behind it was. Like, obviously, we have character themes for all these people, so we wanted to include them. But at the end of the day, I felt really inspired, like looking at that scene, being like, this is like I want to take what John Williams did at the end of Sorcerer's Stone when Harry, Hermione, and Ron say goodbye to Hagrid and wave him off. That felt like the same type of emotion. And so I went and did a deep like score dive into that scene because I felt it inspired me, and I was like, what did he do that like worked so well? And then how can I take what he did and apply it to our show and our themes and our sound. So I guess to come back to your question, like I frequently, even like this past week, I sort of go back to music that I fell in love with for a variety of reasons. And I try to look at it with a fresh pair of ears every time I come back to it. And I feel as I get better in my craft and I score more scenes and get more time with stuff, I'm starting to like see different details that every piece of music that I was excited about, like I find something new in it. And it's really inspiring for me to go back and be like, oh, like here's how, so and so used this chord, or like this type of progression gave me this, like gives me this emotion under this dialogue, and like this is the stakes of the scene. And so and I guess I'm just a nerd and I like to go back and do a deep dive into these things, but then I take it and I say, well, now here's this, you have this opportunity to apply all that, geeking out, if you will, to the project you're working on. So how can I take these elements and like meld it to become the original work that was this finale scene? So for me, a bunch of studying and sort of having ideas of, hey, this sounds like this, and I want to emulate this because for me it works emotionally, and so I go about trying to bring that out.
Great.
Yeah.
Brian, what do you think? Where do you find your inspiration?
I think obviously like I love I think that if you're working in this industry, you gotta, watching a lot of current TV and film is really important. I love that. Even if it's like something that's a completely different sound from the project you're working on, like there's always something to draw from it. There was like one thing that it maybe unorthodox answer to this question that I think one of my professors at Berkeley would talk about this, in that it's an interesting time in that you said John Williams is writing with paper. We write everything with a computer, and we're mocking it all up so that this mock-up sounds like how it's going to be when it's recorded. Sometimes we don't even get to record it, and that means we're having to work with all these different synths, sample libraries, all this technology. And I think that as much as it's really important to write on what's going to sound good being played, that's obviously the most important thing. There's something to be said for how the samples and synths and libraries inherently play back and what they give back to you. Like there's kind of it. I personally feel like there's an input output to them, and that's what my professor talked to me. He's like, there's some stuff that you write on these some libraries that might sound good, others that may not sound good. And I think that personally, I've always found as someone who's kind of leaned more into the tech production side of things and like looking for really cool new ways to do production in an organic way. I feel like that inspires me a lot. Like I'll be just go through a library that I haven't looked at in like a long time, or presets I have, or like a different library, and like find a sound and mess with it and make something cool, and that becomes a whole basis for a cue, or like this one string library I haven't used for a while, like the portamento is awesome on it. So I end up writing a cool like portamento line. Like maybe it's a little bit, throwing stuff at a wall random, but sometimes that's the kind of thing that unlocks some creativity for me. And ultimately ends up working really well because like you're working in tandem with the tools that you have at your hand. So that's kind of something that I think about a lot. Jesse?
Yeah, I mean, I a- agree with all of the above. I'll try to add another thing, I guess, that hopefully is helpful. Sometimes, especially if I'm feeling stuck or something, sometimes I'll try to go to some art that's non-musical for inspiration. Um, one time I was doing like a composition course thing when I was in high school, and they would take us to museums around Boston, and then we'd have to write after going to a museum, which was like really cool. I would have never thought to do that on my own, and I found that really interesting because um, it was inspiring, but the original source of the ideas were not necessarily musical, and I think sometimes it's very refreshing to just kind of experience other art and then see sort of what your music brain comes up with. And then with music, sometimes I try to remember to listen to challenging avant-garde stuff that I might not necessarily put on like in the car to like jam out to, you know? But there are a lot of musicians also just like not in the film, not film composers at all, but just doing weird, interesting stuff. And there's just so many cool ideas out there. So I just try to, especially if I'm feeling stuck or like I'm repeating the same ideas over and over again, or I can't seem to um, do something that seems new to me. Those are kind of the wells that I'll go to sometimes.
No. But I just thought of one more question I think is in maybe relevant. Some people may not like some of the answers, so if you don't feel comfortable answering, but I think the school
I do.
systems in general and just kind of the path along music. I mean, a lot of us probably all started out with piano lessons or guitar lessons or whatever, and that's kind of the traditional path. And then there's just so many directions that we can go. And you guys all came from one of the most well recognized music colleges. Berkeley's. I mean, there's some of those very top places out there. But I'm curious to get your take on not for that person who's not going to Berkeley or not able to get into there. I mean, there's probably a lot of people that come out of Berkeley and don't do anything with their music as well, right? I mean, that's normal of any school, but just curious, do you feel like somebody that doesn't get into Berkeley or can't afford it or isn't, that's not even on their radar, are there enough ways or paths that people could learn this stuff on their own? And is that a requirement these days to, man, I didn't go to Berkeley like these other three guys that all came together. So what's the path you think that people should think about, and not get discouraged if they're not at Berkeley, I guess?
I mean, I feel like so. So I mean, Berkeley's great, and I would say that I personally like wouldn't be here without Berkeley. I think that not to say that you can't like do my path or your own path, but I'll say like the parts of Berkeley that are important for like for me is like it was the community and the skill set. So if you can build those two things on your own, then you don't necessarily need to go to college or like no one's asked me what my degree is to get work. It's about relationships and about skill sets for me personally, like I maybe at the time, when I was in college, like I don't know, I don't feel like YouTube University quite existed in the same way, but you can learn a lot about music production and composition in that way. If that is a way that you are able to learn, then like great, go do it. I think personally, I needed like the in-person instruction and like that's a better environment for me to learn sewing a bit more in depth. But I think it's all about like the the best part about Berkeley is like I met all these people and I have this like built-in community. And if you get that in different ways and people support you, then it doesn't matter whether you go to Harvard or whatever school you want. It's about real meaningful connections with people.
And Alex, I'll bet the YouTube University is something you're referring to almost daily in your job now, and you're continuing to
Yeah,
level
absolutely.
up, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Like learning never stops. That's the best part about I mean, I suppose any career, but especially music. Like we're all excited about something that, captured us as a kid. And so I am always trying to make time to go back to that and find that thing because it's easy to get, disheartened or jaded by just the realities of like, hey, you're treating this as this is a business now. It's no longer just for fun. But it's really important to go back and find that sort of like happy part of you that said, I love this and here's why. And for me, that's a bit of YouTube, a bit of going back to old scores and just taking a moment, usually over the weekend, to just like listen again to the stuff that really inspired me. And
Yeah.
I can feel refreshed for the week.
Yeah, I absolutely don't think you need to go to Berkeley to do what we do or get a career in music. Like I think if I always think I've learned way more just in my first 2 years out here than I did in my 3 years at Berkeley. And it's not a slight on Berkeley. It was a really great experience for me, but like think about it this way, a lot of the jobs that you're going to be getting into right away out of Berkeley or any college aren't going to be necessarily doing the thing. I have a lot of friends that went to the record industry and they're starting off as runners at studios. And that's cleaning toilets and bringing people lunch and stuff. And you do that for a little while, but guess what? Those people now are going on tour and doing all this other stuff. And when I was an intern first with Bear, I wasn't writing music. I was taping parts and scores together for sessions. That's not something that you need that a Berkeley college degree to do. Like anyone can do that. You have to go put yourself out there and put yourself in that situation and in the industry. But once you're in there, you're going to learn so much more just being around it and being around the people. And as long as you're taking the time on the outside to learn, like on YouTube or like with the people you're working with by watching them, like that is going to be way more valuable than a class. You learn a lot of fundamentals, but like that real experience is so much more important. So 100%. If you didn't go to Berkeley, you could be an intern at Sparks and Shadows and for Bear 100%. Like it's not there's no barrier to entry. People do not care about it like that for sure. So don't be put off if you're in that boat.
The barrier to entry is like your attitude and how you approach the task.
Exactly.
It's about being the person that people want to spend time with when they're stressed and crunched on a job.
Yes, exactly.
I think I'll add one thing, if you don't mind. I totally agree with Alex and Brian about you absolutely do not have to go to Berkeley or music school to do this. The the one thing that I'll say though is that I think when we say that, and because I've been guilty of this before when students have asked me this question, I'm often assuming that they like play an instrument and are musically literate to some degree. And now in like the world of YouTube University and production, some people are very into production, but they might not actually play an instrument or they don't know how to read music and or those kinds of things. And while it's possible to become a film composer doing that, it's much more difficult if you don't have some amount of music literacy. So I would say if you're in that position, don't necessarily pay a bunch of money to go to music school, but maybe find a teacher, like find a mentor, learn to play the piano, maybe even find a composition teacher or something and take privately in a way that's more affordable. Like that mentorship and skill set, you don't, if you feel like you can't teach yourself and you need a mentor, that is okay. And you can still do that without going to like a very expensive conservatory. So it doesn't have to be one or the other, I guess is all I mean.
And to reiterate your point of like, outreach and being scared of emails, like this is one like most people are like want to help others. So this is the type of thing where you could do outreach to someone, and whether that is like, the top composer in town or just like a composer that lives in like there are plenty of music schools in different parts of the country, and you could reach out to a professor there and say, hey, like I want to learn privately. Is this something that we could like, are you the person to talk to? How do I learn more about this? And people are down to help. There's lots of different ways to take advantage of the stuff in your local area if you wish to grow.
So speaking of that, on the topic of Alex giving me good advice when we were in college, I believe this is Alex who told me to do this. There's a professor at Berkeley named Dennis LeClaire, totally brilliant. And students would take lessons with him outside of their Berkeley education because he was such a good private instructor in orchestration and composition. Did he or would he have taught kids who didn't go to Berkeley? I would have probably, I don't know. But like you wouldn't know if you didn't ask. And like he taught me some stuff that no other teacher there even like he taught me stuff I'd never heard of before about orchestration. And that was just a
Oh,
private lesson. It had nothing to do with Berkeley. It had nothing to do with tuition, any of that. So I think Alex was the one who was like, you gotta talk to this guy. So
Yeah,
kudos to Alex. But
you're welcome. There was a
yeah.
couple professors who did that. I was taking with a different one named Andrew List, but they're all great. And the idea is that, yeah, but like Dennis is great. And the point is just that like you said, I feel like I'm missing this or I want to grow in this way. And so you took the initiative to seek that out. And it's bettered you and you felt like you're a better writer now. And I totally agree that like my private lessons in composition were like instrumental, haha, in improving like my skill set. And now like, yeah, so more outreach. Don't be afraid.
What
Email's good.
one of the things I'm hearing from you guys is that I think the big skill that every person needs to be able to acquire is you need to learn how to learn. And I do think, when I hear people talk about their college experience or their private mentoring or, teaching when they were in lessons is people people need to surround themselves with people who are better than them. I've heard some people say you become the average of like the six people you spend the most time with, and so I think there's absolutely some value in doing that. But what I hear also from Alex, you and Jesse, you you specifically sought out the talented people who rose to the top. And Brian, same things happened with you. Those top tier people end up rising and kind of becoming a community together or become friends, and I think that's probably the key thing to finding success in, especially what you guys are doing is can you find that group of people who is talented? It's not that you want to like, shun the one that's not very good, either necessarily, but don't be a jerk, obviously. But I think, seek out those people who can make you better and help you level up in your game and then take the initiative to actually do it. That's the other thing that I hear from you guys is that, if you can go to YouTube University and learn. But man, it's hard to be motivated to go and do that every day in and day out too. So having somebody to hold you accountable or, like going to the school where they have the course and you're forced to do that, deadline that you got to get done by the weekend that you really didn't want to do. And there was 100 other things you would have rather done, but luckily school pushes you through that to probably push us harder than we would have ever done on our own too. So I think it's key for all of us to just recognize, what are your traits and then how can you push yourself, right?
yeah,
So
everyone works differently for sure in terms of the pressure they need. I think
yeah.
ultimately you got to be honest with yourself, like about just areas that you need to improve or what you can do. Learn a new instrument. Like you can. There's so many out there. I taught myself guitar when I moved to LA. Like there's Alex has picked up like random instruments like the taggle harpa. Like that's like stuff that's like no one's telling you to do that, but like you can just decide to do it because you look at yourself and realize that where you could grow as a musician, and it's only going to benefit you. So
And hopefully your neighbors, for your neighbor's sake, you don't pick bagpipe or some other instrument that's really going to be awful, right? So,
oh man, no.
well, gosh, guys, this has been fun. I would love to go another hour, but I know we're kind of the end of the time. Uh, so Jesse, Alex, Brian, I'm going to put a place for people to go check out your stuff. Each one of you guys have a website. I'm going to put that in the show notes. So that'll be on the YouTube or wherever you're listening, if on the Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So go in there, go check this stuff out. I'm also going to include some playlists that of some of your music. If you're listening to this, you're like, man, I want to hear some of the stuff they've done. The Percy Jackson stuff you guys done. We've got a whole playlist. I'm gonna stick on there. You've got the oh gosh, the Call of Duty Vanguard project. I know there's a really, really cool one, and all three of you guys were involved heavily in that project as well. And I know we'll post several playlists. Like if you're just looking for some inspiration, if you're a music person, go click on the links in those show notes and go check these out because they're really good. And go watch the show Percy
Thank you.
Jackson. If my kids liked it, it's a good show. It's going to be really fun when the new version's coming out soon, right? Or it's got to be in
Yeah,
the works a little bit, right?
Soon is December, I think, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
crunch time will be coming sooner than you guys want, right?
Well, that's probably true, but
NDAs make it so we probably can't say if that's something that is happening, right? So
Yeah, I want to not for that, but
awesome. Well, thank you guys. This was fun. I'm sure you can track these guys down if you want to send them an email. It sounds like they're all nice guys and might even respond to an email to you too. So
just
thank
be
you so much.
persistent. Be persistent. If you don't
Yeah.
reply, write again.
Awesome. Okay, thanks
Oh, yeah.
guys so much.
thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
Hey, it's Jason here, and I hope you've gotten a lot of value out of this episode. Be sure to check out our show notes to learn more about our guest today, and if you'd like to support our podcast, there's a few things that you can do to help us grow. First, if you hit subscribe, it will help ensure that you don't miss a future episode. Second, if you'll share it with your friends on social media or send it via email or message, it helps us spread the word as well. And third, if you'll leave an honest review, it really helps with the algorithms so that other people can find our podcast. Finding success and fulfillment in the music industry is possible, and I look forward to seeing you on our next episode.